On this episode of the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, we speak to former Navy SEAL commander and return guest, Mark Devine, and he's going to tell you how you can change your organizational culture to empower its young members. That's right, folks. We got Mark Devine back on the show. Are you ready for this? All right, let's do it.
Welcome to this episode of Moving Forward Leadership. Stick around and learn how to achieve, excel, and become a leader that people willingly follow. Lead, don't boss. And now, here's the host of our show, Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy.
Welcome all to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It is your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy, and welcome to the Leadership Podcast, where we focus on the three domains of leadership, and that is leading yourself so that you can be that best leader that you want to be, leading your team so that you can build elite, high-performing teams, and then finally lead your organization so you can drive that organizational output to the sun. And here we take guests like Mark Devine and put them together with my 20 years of military experience and bring you the best leadership podcast going as far as I'm concerned. If you want more, check out movingforwardleadership.com for everything around our ecosystem. And it's so great to have you here. So great to have you here for this special episode. I made sure to arrange this episode for today, and you're not even getting one episode today. You're actually getting two episodes with two former Navy SEAL commanders today on here in Canada what we refer to as Remembrance Day. And that is where we take a moment to reflect and think about those members who did not return home, who made the ultimate sacrifice in line with duty and did not make it back home. So it's an honor for me to release these episodes today in recognition of this day. And Mark Devine is one outstanding member. If you have not heard of Mark Devine or heard my previous episode, then you better check it out. And in fact, it's actually one of my featured episodes on the front of my webpage of movingforwardleadership.com. So go there and check out the former episode with Mark and I. If you don't know who Mark is, he's a retired Navy SEAL commander, as I've said. He's an entrepreneur. He's a New York Times best-selling author of multiple books, not just one, but multiple books. He's also the founder of SEALFIT, NavySEAL.com, UnbeatableMind.com, MarkDevine.com, and everything else. He helps people basically unlock their potential by using the principles that he learned on the battlefield in training SEALs, and now he uses this in his own companies to help or other organizations, individuals to basically unlock their potential and achieve great things. This episode, like the first one, is an outstanding episode. Mark is top shelf, world-class quality, and that's why he's here at the show, talking to you, talking to me. So this is it. I'm not going to dive in. There is going to be no ads for this episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with former Navy SEAL commander Mark Devine, all about staring down the wolf. Mark Devine, welcome back to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, man. It is fantastic to get you back here.
Scott, thanks for having me. Nice to see you again.
Just to let you know, you are still, even though it's been like almost 100 episodes, you are still number one downloaded on my
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And I'm not talking by like 2 or 3 download numbers. I'm talking by significant percentage wise. So well done. And it's great to have you back here.
Yeah, no, it's a lot's happened. It's been a couple of years, right?
Oh, yeah, it's been about...
it's like a real different world right now compared to last time we chatted.
Literally.
Some strange ways, for sure.
So how are you making out in this COVID world and COVID environment? Because I know a lot of your business focuses around getting people together with the SEALFIT thing and all that.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we had already begun to move digital. So we have our online courses. We have several of them all, and we've had those for several years. And then we had shifted our coach certification program for Unbeatable Mind from a long, year-long process that required 4 different touch points in person. We shifted that to a virtual only using Zoom. And that was about 9 months or a year before COVID. So we, and now that our live events are on ice, we've shifted to mostly virtual. And actually, we just did a hybrid event. We did our annual or biannual Unbeatable Mind experience as a hybrid event where we had a few hundred people watching and participating virtually. And then we had about 25 high-end clients locally, and we had to, as best we could, do social distancing and all that. But it was pretty cool. It went really well. And so that'll be a model for the future for us. It's interesting. You would appreciate this, but because we're a very experiential, embodied leadership and team development company. And so we're thinking, how are we going to do this? So with the people we had in person, we took them out to the beach and did SEALFIT type training on the beach, military style boot camp training on the beach. And then we had them do a long 3 or 4 hour ruck at night with, sandbags, the classic stuff. And we had them do an ice bath and, Kokoro yoga and all the breathing techniques. And the people at home, pretty much, not everyone, but pretty much most of them, because they were deeply committed to this whole process of being unbeatable, did it on their own, right? So they filled up their bathtubs with ice. While we did the ice bath, they did their ice bath. While we did our PT, they did their PT. While we did our yoga, they did their yoga. While we went out for, a ruck, they went out for a ruck. It was pretty extraordinary. Loved it.
It kind of goes towards a couple of different things there. One of your background, i.e. U.S. Navy SEAL, of, adapt, overcome, still find a way to achieve the mission, i.e. for your business, right? And pushing things to the online space and doing a bit of a mix there and stuff like that. But the other part, which we're really going to dive into today, was, forging that elite team that people, regardless of where they were physically located, still felt that connection and that drive to be part of the team, not let the team down and continue on, including, filling up their bathtub with ice and jumping into it.
The whole theme of the event was uncommon. And the idea is, to thrive in VUCA, you gotta do uncommon things. And in order to do uncommon things, you got to become uncommon yourself. And that means you have to develop and live an uncommon stand. And the stand is essentially what you stand for, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And so we had them throughout the course of the weekend develop their integrated 5-mountain training plan and get really clear about their future post-COVID, So a lot of vision work around what's their purpose, what are they passionate about, how are they going to align with that and create a new vision for their future, and then a mission plan to focus on that. But then the piece that really makes people uncommon is to create a stand that is their uncompromising set of behaviors that they're going to habituate and discipline until they're just baked into their character.
Right.
So that when they show up, they just show up as an uncommon human being and other people take notice. But more importantly, they just get ridiculously uncommon results. And that's kind of what's happened with our company. Like we're thriving in VUCA. Personally, I'm thriving. Of course, as a military guy, you understand this. When the crisis hits, we kind of up our game because that's what we're tooled for crisis.
Yeah. And
when everything's all hunky dory and it seems all calm, the Navy SEAL tends to get a little bit bored. Right? Not to say we get complacent, but we can get a little bit bored. So we take on extra projects and we work out extra hard. But it's when the crisis comes that we kind of ratchet into our front sight focus mode and like, okay, now's this time, the warrior steps into the breach. Let's go. So that's kind of what's happened with myself and my company. We're in the breach and we're teaching people how to maintain mental toughness and resiliency and, a calm center in the storm that they're experiencing around them. And then to understand that this is the new reality. To be fair, it's always been the reality, but the perception was that we were going through a calm period for the last, maybe a few years. But if you can prepare your body, mind, and spirit to handle any situation, no matter how chaotic, how VUCA, then you can pretty much thrive and help others thrive and bring your team along, and to really accomplish some extraordinary things while everyone else is suffering. And you don't want to see that suffering, so then you're going to turn your eyes toward those people and really help them through it as well. So that's kind of what we're doing.
That's awesome, man. So much good stuff in there. So today we're really focusing in on your latest book, Staring Down the Wolf.
Which came out a week before the lockdown, by the way.
Wow. Great timing.
It didn't
what else
get,
we're going to do?
Every single media appearance was canceled because they were so focused on the COVID. There couldn't have been a worse time to launch a book. But
I was thinking it was a great time to launch a book because no one else got nothing else to do but read. But I've proven wrong. That sucks. But
people are finding it anyway. So
hopefully you'll get at least a couple sales, because I'll give you a quick little story. The last time you were on, episode 54, by the way, for the listener, it's movingforwardleadership.com/episode 54. So if you're listening to this and haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that one, because we're not going back. We're going to launch forward here. But after that show, one of the listeners, Rob, shout out to Rob, sent me a copy of The Way of the Seal. So we discussed The Way of the Seal in depth. But today we're going to talk about Staring Down the Wolf. So it's all about forging elite teams and the 7 commitments. So from your standpoint, what are elite teams and what are they comprised of? What makes a team an elite team versus an average team?
Well, there's a few things that are really key. One is that, in pursuant to what I was just talking about, an elite team has a set of standards that they're willing to stand their ground on. And those are unique standards. If you take the SEAL teams, for instance, they have an extraordinarily high standard for physical and mental preparation and readiness. They have extremely high standard and bias toward action, which means the way they think and the way they plan and the way they execute is very aggressive, very action-oriented. Not everyone has that stand. They have a high standard for who they let into the organization. And as a result of that, it takes sometimes 3 to 5 years, to actually become a Navy SEAL, even if you've got the right stuff. They've got a high standard for how they handle risk. So they have a very high tolerance for risk, but a very low tolerance for lack of risk mitigation and risk planning. Does that make sense? So they kind of bracket that with very, very detailed planning, obsessive amount of training, ridiculous amount of training, so that we can take on risk that seems impossible or inordinate for the average human being, or organization. So those are some of the things that kind of characterize an elite team. It's a culture of, a constant and never-ending growth, built on courage and trust and respect, and an operational focus of improvement every day, trying to improve the individual's capacity to perform, to improve the team's capacity to accomplish the mission, given the range of skills, tools, operational requirements, and actual mission sets that we're tasked with, so that every day we have this commitment to excellence. Just figure out how to do something better, figure out how to improve the equipment, figure out how to improve the SOPs, always looking at trying to simplify things and do things a little bit better. And everybody gets to have a say in that. It's not like a department of improvement, right? It's everybody has their own department of improvement. Even the most junior individual can weigh in on how to improve or simplify a process or a piece of equipment. And a lot of the entire industries have been spawned by the Navy SEALs. Like the tactical backpack industry was spawned by a friend of mine at SEAL Team 3, because he was a parachute rigger, and riggers are sewers, right? They have these sewing machines because they got to sew up parachutes when they rip. And so he just started sewing together tactical backpacks because he's tired of the old Vietnam era Atlas pack that kept getting issued, to the operators. And I had mine when I got, into SEAL Team 3. And the next thing I know, I see him walking around with what everyone thinks must have been around forever, these really cool tactical backpacks. He had built the first one, and then he created a company called Blackhawk. There's like tens of these examples where these SEALs just innovated stuff, not just SEALs, but special operators. So they're very innovative, very prone toward constant improvement. And then resiliency is another one. By the way, these are, I'm kind of checking through the 7 commitments here, probably unbeknownst to most listeners that I talk about in my book, but they're super resilient, right? So we have a mindset that we will fail. It's a necessary condition of success, right? So we don't expect everything to go well. We expect things to go poorly. We train for shit. We train for Murphy to show up, and we're not surprised when it does, which is a really valuable skill for leaders today. You know, we don't have a perfect plan, and we know that the execution is not going to be perfect. So we fail forward fast, and we actually try to fail forward faster every day. And that makes us extremely resilient, because when we're hit by that challenge or the obstacle or the failure, we're ready for it. We're expecting it. We don't shy from it. And actually we embrace it, because that's where the growth is. That's where the learning moments are, and the real opportunities for the team to innovate and to adapt and improvise and overcome and find a way or make a way to succeed. And then the last thing that really makes elite teams utterly unique is total alignment. So many teams are not aligned. They're not aligned in vision. They have different visions for what their personal vision is for being on the team, what the team's vision is. They have different senses of what the mission is even, and maybe different pictures in their mind of what success looks like for the mission. They have different levels of commitment, right? Personal commitment toward the team and toward the mission. A lot of times individuals have different levels of discipline around their preparation and training, and even their commitment to self-improvement. And so you get all this disparity and these clashes, right, which make a very complicated culture. And any culture will literally vibrate to its lowest level. You know, if there's a dissonance in the culture, then it tends to shift the vibratory energy of the whole team out of balance, right? It's like something's oscillating nice and smooth, and then someone injects some negativity or a different level, a different viewpoint that is a fixed mindset viewpoint, for instance. It creates this kind of either cognitive or emotional dissonance, and then it shifts everything out of whack. And so teams tend to fall to the lowest common denominator, whereas an elite team, they don't allow this to happen. They're in total alignment. Everyone's, at the same level of commitment. Everyone must have the same level of discipline toward their training and preparation and mindset. They have clarity around what the vision is and what the vision for mission success is and what the boundaries are for that. They have clarity around their level of authority as well as autonomy. Sorry about this. And they're able to share this in a really transparent and frequent way through their communication protocols, which as you know, we call battle rhythm, right? So how do we communicate across and up and down the chain of command, and the frequency of that and the type of things that are communicated? That's all thought through and done with, an uncommon level of attention to detail on elite teams.
That's awesome.
There's a lot there. Sorry.
Yeah. Just a couple, one or two things to unpack there, right? But one of the things that struck me that I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into was your notion that even the most junior person or the newest person of an organization can bring things forward. And often when people think of military organizations, they think of that hardcore gunny Sergeant Hartman, orders coming down, you will do this, you will do that. And they often think, especially from special forces perspective, it's like, oh, they must be all about that. Everybody's following the order to the exact letter. But the reality is it's not true like that at all. So can we unpack that part of, how we can go about, how leaders can go about, inspiring their younger people to bring these ideas forward? Because a lot of the younger people out there these days are the ones coming with the new ideas. They're the ones that are coming with the new ideas of, tapping into the different social media outlets out there, tapping, using the new technology that's out there. And if the organization doesn't have that culture already of enabling these new folks to bring these ideas forward, it's just going to falter and leave.
That's right. Yeah, innovation comes when a new idea gets paired with a known methodology, and something that works better comes out of that. Sometimes, but rarely, a new idea and a new methodology will spring forth that completely replaces something old. But usually, it's where the new and the old kind of mix and mash up, and then you get some sort of incremental or leapfrog innovation. And it's very difficult for someone who's done things the same way, over and over throughout the years to really think outside that box, right? So that's why it's important for leaders to constantly empty their cup and let go of what they know and what they think they know, to open up to what they don't. And simultaneously, it's important for young leaders to respect that there's, not everything's meant to be thrown out, right? Because you oftentimes throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so you want to look at what's working, but how to improve something. And if in that process you see that it does need a complete overhaul, then great, but work together to create that overhaul, because there might be second and third order consequences that you don't see as the young guy that the older, the more seasoned veteran might see. So it really is kind of a dance. It requires just respect from all parties, right? So I can see this both ways. I've seen it where the old timers don't have respect for the young timers because they lack the experience, and the young timers don't have respect for the old timers because they're old school, and they're on their way out, or their systems obviously, they always think there's a better way to do it when you're young and looking forward. And the older folks are looking backwards saying, well, we've already tried that. So you need to have respect on both sides of the equation, right? How do we develop that respect? It's where everyone on the team is doing things where they share experiences and they share vulnerabilities, they share training, they share risk. And so the young guy, let's say an example of the military, the young guy gets to see that the older guy actually has some tremendous experience on, and operationally in certain things that, they don't, and that experience could save their lives. And then the older guy sees that the young guy has a tremendous amount of energy and inspiration and new ideas. And so they're more willing to accept those ideas and that energy, because they're training together and they're sharing risk together, right? So that's kind of uncommon, right? So that requires that teams learn to grow both horizontally and vertically. And what I mean by that is that teams will do things to improve their skills for things that they already know how to do, or things that they need to know how to do. And those skills, we're always training. In fact, most organizations and most teams, that's all they do, is training new skills, and that'd be akin for the military unit to go out and refresh their shooting skills and refresh their jumping skills or their diving skills. These horizontal skills are necessary, and they increase the capacity of the team to get the mission done, but they don't change the human beings who are doing them, right? It's the same person. The person I am, Mark, before I do the 1 week shooting course, is the same person as I am when I finish the 1 week shooting course. Those are horizontal skills. So they do those together, but they also engage in what we call vertical development. And vertical development is a type of development where it changes the character of the individuals. And what this looks like, and what we're starting to work with the SEAL teams, is when a team can commit to actually doing breath work and mindfulness training together and visualization together as a team. And so through that process, they're improving their capacity to get mission accomplishment, because the breath control is going to make them calmer as a team. It's going to bleed off stress. They're going to have more confidence that, you're not going to wig out, or your teammate's not going to wig out. Great, check. But also that breath control, the breath training has a serious effect on your capacity to see more. It's going to change your brain over time, through neuroplasticity. To be able to, entrain yourself into more of a flow state, and you're going to feel more connected to your teammates. So you tend to have this sense of growth beyond just being able to shoot better, right? You have this sense of growth. Same thing with mindfulness, right? You're going to see patterns. You're going to be able to eradicate kind of negative conditioning, which allows to greater situational awareness on the battlefield, as well as greater control over any kind of reactionary conditioning that might get in the way of a good decision. Right? It's very important for that as a leader. And so, those skills, which are the softer internal skills, tend to lead to vertical development. And there's other skills too, like really, really teaching the team to move beyond their own needs and to take care of their team's needs, and also to have a definitive teammate that you are responsible for. So that's like in the SEALs, you take care of the team and the team's gear and mission first, then you take care of your teammate, and your teammate takes care of you. And in this way, you're always watching someone else's back and someone's watching your back. And this has a profound effect of creating a greater depth of relationships and connectability with other humans, which then extends to your ability to be a good leader and a good follower, a good teammate. These are all skills we call vertical development skills. So when you combine vertical and horizontal development skills into your training plan, man, it really does open up a whole new vista for teams that bring great trust and respect, which are the glue and the grease that allow teams to really operate at an elite level.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Now, one of the common themes I keep hearing over and over out of you right now is respect. And sure. you have that, as one of the 7 commitments in the book as well. Mm-hmm. So obviously this is a super important thing, and mm-hmm. And it obviously is part of it, part of the glue that forges these elite teams. So how do leaders go about? What are some of the best ways for leaders to go out and ensure that they have an organization that embodies respect, has a culture of respect for everybody, up and down the chain of command, horizontal, lateral, whatever?
Mm-hmm. The first 3 commitments are instrumental. Everything's built on those. First is courage, then trust, and then respect. So without courage, you'll lack respect in an organization. And what I mean by courage is the courage to, as a leader, and everyone's a leader. So either you're leading or you're following, and those roles kind of shift and change. I'm not talking necessarily about positional leadership. Although if you're a positional leader, then obviously that you have to pay a special attention to this, because you could be the limiting factor or the limiting energy of your team if you're not courageously looking at your flaws, looking at your biases, looking at your emotional shadow and how you show up with a team, right? And this is why 360 feedback is so critical. When I did one of those a few years ago, it was like getting hit over the head with a 2x4. It's like, holy cow, here I am after all these years, I teach elite teams and leadership, and this is still how I'm showing up in certain ways with my team. And so I was able to, humbly admit that I still flawed as a leader, and take action to improve, certain aspects of my character so that I could show up more authentically and lead better. So great humility and transparency and follow through are required, right? When or come out of courage. And what I mean by follow through is a follow through, when there's a character defect that's identified, you actually take action on it. You don't just nod your head or deny it or, pretend that it's just, people don't know what the heck they're talking about. So when everyone commits to courage to show up authentically with humility, to check their egos at the door, to radically improve the quality of the team experience, starting with themselves, then trust starts to really grow. And trust is an incremental thing. It takes a long time. Trust is built one action at a time, one follow through at a time, one, authentic conversation at a time. But it can be stripped away in an instant. You've heard the term in the military, one aw shit wipes out 1,000 attaboys, right? That's what we're talking about there. Like you could build 1,000 attaboys of trust and have it wiped away in one heartbeat, just because if you're not paying attention to your negative reactionary conditioning or your shadow, and you show up and you drop a little bomb because you're having a bad hair day, then boom, it's gone. The good news is, if you build a bank account of trust, you can build it back fairly quickly, but you have to start with apology and start with acknowledgement that you did something to screw things up. And a lot of leaders struggle with that because they think they're supposed to be perfect. So you got to drop the perfectionism, drop the need to be right, which is like crack cocaine for human beings, needing to be right. You drop all that, drop righteousness, drop judgmentalism, drop perfectionism, and show up with the team fully admitting that you're a flawed human being and don't have all the answers, just like them. And together we can solve this, because together everyone can achieve more, which is one of the acronyms I love for team. So then trust in the team, trust in the ability to, when we're authentic and we act with integrity and we speak the truth, we may not always, my truth may not sync up with your truth, but we can have a conversation about, why, and maybe there's a middle ground or a higher order truth that can come out of that. I love the saying that the definition of high intelligence is when you can hold two contradictory truths in your mind and not go crazy. Right. And that's what a good leader and a good team can do. Like you come and you have a truth, and I come and I have a different truth, and they clash. Instead of me judging your truth or thinking I'm right, we examine those two things. We hold them up and we look at them. We're like, oh, wow, these are consistent within our points of view or our perspectives. But by combining these two and stripping away this and that and maybe creating a simpler model, we can actually create a higher order truth, which is going to be more effective and lead to less second or third order consequences. That can only happen if there's tremendous courage and trust amongst the teammates, right? To not feel like they're going to be judged or backstabbed, or you know what I mean? All that kind of subtle communication stickiness that happens in organizations, right? So you open up to more authentic and vulnerable communications around how to get stuff done and the effect of your energy and your personality on the team and that type of thing. And once we start to have those conversations at that level, the depth of respect, both for yourself and for the team, starts to really, really expand. Because again, respect is when you recognize that we're not perfect, but I'm willing to admit that and to work on myself every day. And when people show up every day with that attitude, that growth attitude, and are willing to admit when they screw up and are willing to help others, through challenging times, then, there's nothing but respect all around. Those three attributes, or those three commitments, and I call them commitments because they really are, they're practices, a set of practices for each one. There's a set of practices that you can work on daily to be more courageous, like we talked about, and more trustworthy, so that you can, show up with, have more trust, for yourself or your actions. And then also there's practices around being respectable, and to respect others. And that's the foundation. Without that, like if you try to jump right toward alignment or right toward excellence, and a lot of people do that. They focus on the going right toward the processes or the behaviors without working on the intentions and the attitudes and the mindset. And it doesn't work, because it all starts with intention, attitude, and mindset when it comes to leadership and teams.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And so much truth in there. And, yes, the acronym you said, that was a very American one. We don't use that one up here in Canada, but we have our similar ones, right?
Yes.
But one of the things that really comes out there is, dropping the ego. As leaders, we have to let our egos go. We can't let it get the best of us, because if not, then we're going to start people are going to start losing respect for us, because we think we know it all, like you said, and that drive as human beings to seem like we know it all, and it almost sounds counterintuitive. Now, one of the things that you've mentioned, which someone, if they're looking at the outline of your book, you say one of the 7 key principles is excellence, but at the same time, you say, well, you don't have to be right all the time.
Right.
And that almost could sound, a little bit counterintuitive, a little bit oxymoronish. Like, well, how is it that we can be excellent and have a commitment, a key principle of commitment to excellence, but at the same time be wrong? How is that work?
Well, that's a great question. Excellence really has to do with behavior and action, whereas being right and wrong has to do with intention, attention, and mindset, right? So another way to say that is excellence has to do with the exterior domain, right? And trust, respect, and courage have to do with the interior domain, right? The field of your potential versus the field of performance. So excellence, another way to look at excellence is the saying that we always had in the SEALs that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Well, that's partially true in a kind of a platitudinous sense. But what was really speaking to is like, if you pay attention to detail and you do, and you're able to focus on your one task and not multitask and not, throw your attention all over the place. So if your intention is to put your attention on the singular task, which is the right task for you to do right now, which is tied to your mission. And then when you take that action, with enough mindful awareness and attention to detail that it is an excellent action, meaning it's like as perfect as you can make it, knowing that there's no such thing as perfection. There's only perfect effort. And that is excellence. So you see how those link. And if we strive for excellence in the small things, then the big things tend to work themselves out. And you have a much higher degree of success, given the fact that the bigger it is, the more complexity is going to be involved. And no plan survives contact with the enemy or reality. So that's where the attitude that, it's not going to be perfect. And part of my excellence is to be prepared for challenges and obstacles and setbacks and failure, and to have a contingency plan, and then to rapidly assess the situation and activate the OODA loop, figure out what's going on and observe it and orient yourself to it and make a new decision, and then act on that and radically focus on that, right? So excellence is about a set of behaviors, habits, and actions that lead to excellent results and constant improvement. But that's all built upon intention, attention, attitude, and mindset, which are all interior and have to do with non-action, but about everything that precedes action.
Makes absolute sense to me, and absolutely love it. And one of the cool things that's coming out now is suddenly the linkages across the 7 principles and how one is basically flowing into the other. So you talked about courage, trust, respect, and how they're the foundation. And we kind of skipped over growth, but it's been sprinkled throughout. And now
the growth is the vertical and the horizontal growth.
Right.
But it's hard. You can't get the vertical growth unless you have courage, trust, and respect.
Exactly.
Because the energy gets stuck.
And now we were just talking about excellence in that, and like you said, no plan survives contact with the enemy, reality, however you want to use the saying. Right. And therefore, excellence becomes, how do you adjust? How do you continue? How do you ensure that you still get the task done? And that now ties into resiliency.
Right.
And we talked a lot about resiliency, but obviously resiliency as a leader and as a team, they have to be important because we go through ups and downs. That's life. We're in a major down right now for some people, and others are major ups depending on what type of business that you're in. So let's dive a little deeper into the resiliency aspect, shall we?
Sure. Resiliency for us, there's so many ways to look at resiliency. It's this attitude or this experience. Again, resiliency has an internal and external aspect to it as well. The internal aspect is yesterday's done, right? The Navy SEALs said the only easy day was yesterday. That's basically saying, hey, it's over. So therefore it's easy. In your memory, it's easy. Yeah, you did this, you did that, you kicked ass, you took names, you had these things. That's easy. But what are you going to do today to exceed that, right? What are you going to do today? to thrive. And so we don't dwell in the past and we don't dwell in the future, right? You plan the best you can with a good enough plan for the future. You let go of regrets and any attachment to your accomplishments or failures of the past, whether it's yesterday or more distant past. And you show up today with everything you got. We call that one day, one lifetime. You show up today with everything you got. And to be fair, as a warrior, as you know, today might be the last. So you better be present and show up. So you're there for the team and the mission, and you're aware if it is your last day. Now, with that attitude, we tend to become really resilient because we just show up day after day doing the best we can, eradicating the regrets from the day before, planning for the future, then letting go of attachment to it. And then we get all this energy to focus in the now moment during the day on our mission, on our tasks, on our projects. I can't think of any other kind of definition or way to describe a highly resilient human being, because in the now moment, it doesn't matter what's happening. You're always going to be able to respond effectively because you're not burdened with the past and the future, and you're able to tap into that situational awareness and that mindful presence that we've been practicing as a resilient human being, which allows us to respond positively to the situation. And then we move on to the next target, next task, next project, next mission. And we're always learning, we're always growing. And when we really get blown over by something like COVID, where it's like knocks us off our feet, then, we have the tools and the skills to get up and dust ourselves off and immediately ask, wow, what did I learn? This is a great opportunity to really, really learn, because that was a big one, right? That was a big wave. And it knocked me on my ass. What did I learn from that? We tend to kind of blow off the little ones, although there's great learning in the little things that kind of get us sidetracked. So we want to learn from everything during the day. So resiliency is about learning and growth and just acknowledging that there is no such thing as failure, just different ways of accomplishing things. Recognizing that the challenges will be there regardless of whether I want them to be or not. No matter how much I plan or how good my team is, they're going to be there. And to prepare for them, be very adaptable. I love the kind of the positive acronym for VUCA. VUCA, of course, is military acronym for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And the positive version of that is, what gets us through volatility is vision. What gets us through uncertainty is understanding, common understanding. What gets us through complexity is clarity about our mission and about our intention, and our actions. And what gets us through ambiguity is adaptability. And if you can have vision and understanding and clarity and adaptability, then you're very resilient as a human being. And you do that by taking things one day at a time and really applying all the different principles and commitments we've been talking about on this podcast.
Love it. And I love the part where you say, there's basically no such thing as failure. It's just pick a way of explaining it, but just new ways of learning, different ways of learning. Right. And it's how you react to it and ensuring that you take the best out of the situation.
That's right.
And that's what leaders do. And that's how we forge these elite teams, as you obviously know, because you've been part of some of the world's most elite teams.
Right. Right.
And the last part that you're getting at, I could see alignment coming in, ensuring the vision and the mission and all of that, through that resiliency, alignment has to come into play, and making sure that making sure everybody's on the same page, everybody understands.
Right. And this is where you can see that this becomes not a linear thing, but like a self-reinforcing or almost a holographic thing where all these, because the alignment then reinforces resiliency, it reinforces excellence, so it has almost a backward flow to it. It reinforces growth, because if you're out of alignment, all those things could be out of whack, So alignment then feeds courage in the other direction in a circular way, which then breeds more trust and respect, which then accelerates growth. And then people are then, the team is then more motivated for excellence, and they take on bigger missions because their vision is expanding, their confidence is expanding, which makes them more resilient, right? Because they're dealing with bigger challenges and having bigger setbacks, which means they're learning and growing more. And then they have this desire or kind of urge or compulsion to be even more aligned, because, think of like SpaceX, for example. Like, how aligned is that organization around a mission to colonize Mars? And then in order for that to happen, they're extraordinarily courageous. They've got great trust and respect. I know this. I've spoken to them. And they're very much of a growth organization, right? Because they have to have honest and vulnerable conversations. Like when I spoke to them, they're like, yeah, we're kind of scared that we're going to kill a human being, the first time we send them up to space. And how can we deal with our stress and our fear? Because we're not astronauts or Navy SEALs, we're just, we're technical people, we're launch control. So they're really growth oriented and committed to like ridiculous excellence. Every day they're tweaking, trying to figure out, and they don't fear failure. Obviously, you know what I mean? How many times do they fail? And Elon and the rest of the team just sloughs it off as like, that was a necessary failure because we learned something incredibly valuable. So they're very resilient and aligned.
I remember watching a video with Elon, and he was explaining how they're basically at the brink until they actually got the successful launch. He's like, yeah, we're going to go one more time. Yeah. And if it doesn't work this time,
we fold it up.
we're done.
Right.
Mark, man, this has been fantastic. So great chat with you again. I got one last question about the book that I've been dying to ask you since it came out. And that is, who's the wolf?
The wolf
who's
is
the
yourself.
wolf that we need?
The wolf is yourself. It's it's a metaphor of the fear wolf that resides in your head, which is negatively biased and is what holds you back. And the courage wolf, is in your heart. That's the a metaphor for all those positive internal qualities that you cultivate through the internal practices and through vulnerability and authenticity and whatnot. But the fear wolf is in your head, is the aspect of you as a human being that, as we mentioned earlier, or as a leader that wants to be perfect, wants to have all the answers, thinks that they need to be the one with a bold vision and is going to, have all the right answers. So staring down the wolf means you stare down the bias toward perfectionism, stare down the bias toward not sharing as much of yourself and putting a mask on with one team and a different mask with your leadership team and a different mask at home with your family. Staring down, I don't know if I said this already, but perfectionism and fear of success or fear of failure. There's so many,
Right.
shadow elements and biases that we carry around as humans. You got to stare that stuff down and starve it out. Like the metaphor of you starve the fear wolf, then it's going to lose its energy and power. And then you feed the courage wolf, and that courage and acting from your heart center and being more trusting and respectful and more connecting as a human being, which is going to have enormous effect on your team to unlock its 20x potential. So starve the fear wolf, feed the courage wolf. You starve the fear wolf by staring down the aspects of your character that are, less than optimal until you eradicate them.
Awesome.
And then you show up more fully as a leader.
Love it. Now, as we wrap up the show here, I do got a couple last questions for you. One, which both actually that you did answer last time, but we're gonna compare notes this one, because this last question is one I ask all the guests here at Moving Forward Leadership, and that is, according to you, Mark Divine, what makes a great leader?
Yeah, a great leader is someone who takes their eyes off themselves and puts them on their team.
I bet that will be pretty much verbatim from last time.
It might be. Because if you can't do that, you have no business leading.
Awesome. And finally, how can we follow you? How can we find you? Feel free to give yourself a shout out.
Cool. Thanks. Personal website, markdivine.com, Instagram, #RealMarkDivine, all that kind of stuff. The training and coaching, we have a great certified coaching program. We're really ramping up for Unbeatable Mind, which, we teach these things, and we have, really deep immersive programs to help leaders and teams embrace these 7 commitments. That information is at unbeatablemind.com. And that's a good place. Those are probably enough for now. Yeah.
And for the audience member, all the links, including the other ones that you mentioned in the last episode, are all in the show notes. Just go to movingforwardleadership.com/142. Mark, one thing, we are actually recording this show in the middle of September, but I'm far ahead in my recording right now. But I want to let you know something, and probably something special, that this show is actually going to air on what you guys refer to as Veterans Day. We call it Remembrance Day. So from one soldier to a former soldier, thanks for your service. But everybody out there, take a moment to do a moment's silence for those who are friends who never got to come back.
Thank you for doing that. And also, I do want to add that we have a nonprofit foundation to help vets who are suffering from post-traumatic stress. It's called the Courage Foundation, and we're doing a workout fundraiser in partnership with another foundation. And it's a really fun and simple way to raise awareness for veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress. And then what we do with that money is we put them through a integrated recovery type program that includes 12 months of coaching support from us, as well as an immersive training. So couragefoundation.net or feedcourage.org actually go to the same place. So if you're so inspired to support the vets, check it out.
That's amazing. Oh, yeah, that's added in the show notes already as well. Again, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor to have you back on the show here. It's a great chat as always.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it very much.
All right, that's all I got for you fine folks today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And most importantly, I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, remember R squared, S squared, right? Rate and review the show so that it gets a little bit noticed, a bit more. But most importantly, I can help more people, because that's what I'm here for. That's what my guests are here for, is to help more people become better leaders and not being bosses, right? So remember that. R squared, rate and review. S, share the show. Share this show with someone who you think can relate to the podcast as a whole and today's topic. And then finally, subscribe. Subscribe so that you never miss another episode. And you can do that via your podcast playing app of choice through movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, stop bossing and start leading. Take care now.